symptom we're dealing with, we're going back to the basics in respecting that innate intelligence and saying, okay, what is my innate intelligence trying to do? What ingredients does it need in order to do this?
Welcome to the Dr. Fit Jen Show, where we teach ordinary people how to do extraordinary things. We're going to talk about fitness and food, family, finances, faith, and fun. Welcome to life.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Dr. Fit Jen Show. This is Dr. Fit Jen coming at you in front of many wonderful women this evening because this is actually something that I've never done before. We're combining our podcast and our women's health talk tonight. And I wanted to be able to do this real and live. There are no redos. But, you know, I wanted to hear and talk about many of the things that I run into on a daily basis whenever we are doing consultations with, the questions that you often have or the problems that you run into. It's not just you. And I wanted you to know that it's not just you. Many women have the same questions and they have the same struggles. And I want to go through a lot of those questions and hopefully find the right answers for you, because we're all on the path. We're all on a journey towards better health and better life. And that's what I want for each and every one of you. And that's one of the reasons why I actually do these podcasts too. So this is something that has just recently started. So if you're not on or you want to follow, just let me know and we'll make sure we get you plugged in so that you can tune in to my show. But so I'm in a different setting. I'm a little bit blue and I don't know how to figure out the colors and the lights. So I'm a Smurf tonight. It's okay. I hope that you get a tremendous amount out of this. I truly do. We have a full room tonight, but I hope that someday that we have, many more women just learning and spreading their knowledge to the people around them, because I think there's just so much potential out there, and so many women especially are seeking and searching for the right answers and just don't know where to turn. So all that to say, I want to give you just a little bit about my story. Some of you know as patients, when I was growing up, my family did not have a medical background. We did not have any type of health background whatsoever. My grandparents were not, extraordinarily wealthy by any stretch of the imagination. My grandpa grew up on an Indian reservation, and the background there, and today still is there is no emphasis on health at all, unfortunately. He was my grandparents. I had a very close relationship with my grandparents. I remember growing up, every weekend I could not wait, because each weekend I would get to spend time. And my sister and I would often spend the night with my grandparents. And some of y'all are grandmas in here, and we know what you do to those grandbabies. You spoil them like crazy, and then you send them home. But the grandkid, we loved it. And my grandpa was my best friend. I mean, I absolutely loved him, and I still cherish just when I would talk to him on the phone. The very first thing, you could just hear his voice light up and smile, and you could just I could hear it even on the phone. You could feel it, tangibly feel that love. And he was diagnosed with diabetes somewhere, I don't know, I was 16, 17 maybe. And he, as many people do with that diagnosis, they give him the diagnosis and then they automatically put him on to a, some type of medication regimen. And he was studious with the medication. They gave him the latest and the greatest, and it was actually a brand new medication. I remember not really having any dietary modifications given to him. They said eat sugar-free, and that was the gist of it. And when I was 18, I remember it was the summer that I turned 18. He actually started to have heart failure. And we found out that it was actually from the medications that he was taking. And so that summer, he went into surgery and died on the operating table. And that was very, as anybody that's gone through a death of someone that's been close to them, but at a very young age, it was the first really life-rocking moment for me to lose someone that was so close. And that is really what changed the entire trajectory of my life, really, in terms of, from there, there's something that sparked in me that I had learned from that experience. Okay, medication was not the answer. It can't be this way for everyone. What is that answer? How do I find that answer? And how do I share it with every person that I know so that nobody else has to go down this road that we went through? So he's really the reason why I do what I do. And only by the grace of God, honestly, through a turn of events and some complications that I was having of my own, that my mom introduced me to chiropractic. And chiropractic was actually the fueling, I don't know what you want to call it, the light that showed me that, or taught me that to have respect for the innate intelligence inside of us. And when I learned that there is an innate intelligence inside all of us that God has given to us, whether you believe in God or not, there is an innate intelligence that is always working on our behalf, right? That innate intelligence that started before you were even born, for if you were born, which is all of you, if you've ever been a mom, if you've carried a baby inside your womb, how much did you have to do in terms of the development? How much were you involved in that development and telling that baby's, hands to form and the heart to pump and the neurons to come together? Did you have any say in that? Did you, tell that baby what it needed to do? No, right? We didn't do anything except, walk around very uncomfortably for 9 months. But no, that's that spark of life, the innate intelligence that God put inside all of us. And when that baby was born, when you were born, what do you think happened to that intelligence? Did it just disappear? Is it gone? No, it's still inside every single one of us. And so if we understand that and we look at health through that lens, understanding that our body is always doing everything within its power to keep you alive, to do what it can do, it always has your best interest in mind. Okay? And that's first and foremost. And so if we look at our health issues, or we look at our health from that perspective, then we can go forward saying, okay, my body is expressing a symptom, what have you, whether it's fatigue, whether it's pain, whether it's, a heavy menstrual cycle, it's headaches, whatever it is, my body is expressing a symptom. What is it trying to accomplish or achieve? And why might it be experiencing this symptom? How can I help my innate intelligence to overcome or pay attention or to address this issue? Rather than looking at it as what the allopathic world does is says, here's a symptom, this is a bad thing, let's cover it up. Okay, it's two completely different paradigms. And so chiropractic really, really opened my eyes to that. And that was the biggest foundation that I got. And understanding that your nerve system controls everything, right? So for your heart to beat, your lungs to breathe, your hormones to be at an even level, right? You have to have your nerve system. What are you without your nerve system? Non-existent. You are dead, right? Yeah. So that is the foundation in which I learned. And so it changed my life, obviously, in such a way that I became a chiropractor. But, as I would say even in the last 10 years, more so, that I noticed that as I was getting people adjusted, I was helping their body, their body would balance out, their nervous system would become back into balance. They started healing, not because I did it, but I just introduced a correction. People were still suffering or still having certain health issues and concerns that continued on. And so then we go back to the principles of innate intelligence and looking at the expression of life and the limitations of matter. Okay, I'm not getting any deeper than that, I promise. But the limitations of matter being that everyone is exposed to stress to some degree, whether that's a physical stress, a mental stress, or emotional stress, right? Yes, all of it. You're like, all of it at all times. Yes. Amen and amen. And so the body can overcome stress to a certain amount, but there are times that stress of the world can overcome a body. Okay? It's the same reason why, you can cut. If you have a cut on your hand, it will heal. But if you cut your hand off, well, it's still going to try to heal, but it's going to run out of time or material before it can, right? You're going to bleed out before that body can repair itself. Okay, that's called a limitation of matter. And so going back to in the last 10 years, I've noticed that people were holding their adjustments for shorter and shorter and shorter periods of time. And they were becoming more expressive in their symptoms, if you will, seeing more and more on the intake forms. I see everybody's, all of their problems, and I was seeing more gastrointestinal problems, more chronic fatigue, more just all these types of symptoms that were almost non-existent even 10 years ago. And this is just from an observational standpoint from someone. I don't consider myself that old, but it is a vast difference from when I started 18 years ago to today. Okay, so in a span of less than 2 decades, 20 years, I've noticed a big difference in people's overall health and outlook. So that tells us something. Okay, so what I was finding though is, okay, we're clearing out these nerve systems. People are getting balanced. They're doing better, but they're still exposed to these stresses. And in the last 10 years, do you think those stresses have gone up or gone down? Up 100%. How about in the last 2 years? Yeah. Well, that's like accelerated exponentially for all of us. And what I've noticed, which is really, really scary, guys, is that I'm seeing it in younger and younger and younger people. Okay? When it used to be very rare for me to have a teenager come in, teenagers moody, whatever, but very rarely would they ever mark down depression or fatigue. And now it's a rarity for me not to see that. I kid you not. It's heartbreaking. Because if you're going through this experience that, you're all 29, I get it. What are these kids experiencing before they even hit their 20s? It is not the way God created. I know that for sure. And we are not living in accordance and in respect to our innate intelligence by any stretch of the imagination. So what I found is that, and that's largely why, we launched into just sharing, as I've gone through my own journey with health and nutrition. And, since the passing of my grandfather, I poured and poured and poured. My husband always makes fun of me because they're watching TV and I'm looking at research. I'm listening, to these boring podcasts and reading these books that you really have to be awake for, because I love that stuff because it means something to me. The more I learn, the more I can help y'all, and the more that I can help my family. and so I want that for all of you. So just to understand where I'm coming from, it's not like, oh, well, Dr. Fit Jen, she's always been fit. She's always been healthy. No, that's not the case. And I'm not going to bore you with my past and my health history, but, I'm a seeker, and we're all on a journey, and I want to help you bypass some of those obstacles and hurdles that most people have to go through or still trying to get around with the things that I've learned and the things that I've been able to teach over the last 20 years. So, there are some women here tonight that I can tell you, which is pretty incredible, because medically, these things don't happen, but I see several faces here that have gotten off their medications, off diabetic medication. That's pretty incredible, right? And is it because I have the cure for diabetes? No. But do I have a respect for innate intelligence and what it's trying to do, and an understanding of how it's trying to accomplish that? I'm getting there. I don't have all the answers, but we're getting there. We must be doing something right. So I want to share that with y'all tonight. Okay. I want to talk about all kinds of topics. Menstrual issues come up a lot. Even pregnancy, menopause, diet, fatigue. Anybody here have fatigue? Raise your hand. Okay, so for y'all that can't see, that's like half the room. We're going to talk about that. We're going to go through all of it, but I'm going to start at the beginning for you. In the beginning, God created. No, I'm just kidding. But okay, so I'm going to try to make this as simplistic as possible, and then we'll kind of branch from here. Okay. But when it comes to health and respect of health, okay, your body is made up of trillions of cells, right? Every cell, its major focus, it was designed to create energy for you, okay? Every cell has its energy center, and in those cells is something called the mitochondria. You guys remember learning that in like 6th grade or 5th grade science, right? You guys all have to draw the picture of the cell and the mitochondria, which I actually learned there's not just one mitochondria in a cell. There's actually hundreds to thousands of mitochondria. So the mitochondria is the energy production. That's where your body takes the resources that it was given to turn hydrogen into water, okay? So that your body can convert something called ADP into ATP. Okay, so what you have to remember, that ATP is energy. Every cell produces energy, okay? That is what it is designed to do to keep you alive, all right? So it is like, and some of you have heard me tell you this analogy before because everybody likes cake, right? Our cells are trying to produce a beautiful cake, okay? Every cell is trying to produce a beautiful cake, okay? What happens over time, okay, those cells are like a big factory. And the mitochondria is a factory. And so in order to make a cake, what do we have to start with? We need what? Ingredients. We need ingredients for that cake, okay? So is anybody a baker here? Yeah. Anybody made a cake before? All right. Have you ever made a good cake? Ever made a bad cake? Okay. Usually it's because we either left out an ingredient, right? Or we didn't use the freshest ingredients or what have you. That cake didn't turn out so well. All right. So those cells will make a perfect cake if they have the right ingredients, the right mix of ingredients and the freshest ingredients. Okay. And so what happens though, because of the stressors in our life, physical, mental, chemical, meaning medications and foods, that influences our ingredients. How many times do you eat in a day? A lot. Okay. It should be at least 3. Some of you are like 6, 7, 8. Okay. So we eat, okay, let's just say, minimum 3. Some of you are like, I'll eat once, whatever. We eat 3 times a day. How many days in a week are there? There's 7 days in a week. So you're eating 3 times a day, 7 days a week. That's 21 times in each week. How many weeks are in a year? There's 52. How old are you? Just kidding. Right? So let's multiply that out. How many times are you putting those ingredients into your body? Okay. Let's extrapolate that out. If you come out of your mother's womb perfect, okay? Just so you know, you inherit your mitochondria from your mom. Okay? So if your mom is missing ingredients and mom passes on that mitochondria to you, we might already be starting out with some problems, with some deficits, right? Okay? So let's say you start out as a baby, you're the best that you're going to be, right? You got everything that you need. You're on your mother's milk, producing everything that it can. Granted, it's got everything. But let's say maybe we didn't. We got fed formula. Like in this, what was it, like 50s and 60s and 70s? Suddenly formula was superior to breast milk. Yeah, that's innate, isn't it? Yeah, that's respect to innate intelligence. So anyways, so from the time that you're born to 10 years old, did you have a perfect diet? Maybe some of you, maybe some, not so much. How many here, remembers Pop-Tarts? Yeah. Lucky Charms. Count Chocula. Yeah. So, I mean, would we define that as a great diet? No. So that, by the age of 10, our body still can handle a lot of stress and things. But now let's go to our 20s, our 30s, our 40s even. Okay. So often by the time we get to our 30s and 40s, we were making that cake. The cells are still bound and determined to make that cake, but we're missing a lot of ingredients. So what's supposed to taste like a cake and look like a cake really doesn't do either, but it's still producing. And this is what's happening to the mitochondria. Does this make sense? So your cells are still working to produce that energy, but they're missing half the ingredients, or they're depleted of so many of those ingredients that the end product is not anywhere where it should be. And so that's why many of us have fatigue, right? Half of you raised your hand in here. Many of us will be maybe overweight, but we've got thinning hair. How does that make sense? Or we're overweight, so we're getting fed enough, right? Obviously, you're getting fed enough. Getting fed the wrong stuff. Yeah. So we've got plenty of calories, but we don't have the proper ingredients. Okay, so that's the closest analogy that I can think of what happens when it comes to this mitochondria. Okay, so you have like 600 to 1,000 mitochondria in your ovaries. You got thousands more in your liver. You've got thousands and thousands more in your heart. You have the most, like we're talking thousands. I can't remember the numbers, but in your substantia nigra, which is in your brain. Do you know what the fastest developing chronic disease is that's getting many, many people? It's dementia. Parkinson's related type of issues, dementia, those types of things. You have to have a 60% loss in neurons to be diagnosed with dementia. Can you imagine how many thousands upon thousands of mitochondria have been damaged by the time you get to that diagnosis? It's all about energy production. Okay? So no matter what symptom we're dealing with, we're going back to the basics in respecting that innate intelligence and saying, okay, what is my innate intelligence trying to do? What ingredients does it need in order to do this? What things do I need to eliminate that may be hindering this? And what things do I need to add? Okay, so if we look at it from that perspective, it's really, really simple. Right. Okay, but that is the foundation. All right, that's the foundation. That's where we begin. So I don't want this to like really be a nutrition talk, but ultimately it all boils down to nutrition. It really, really does. Nutrition, adaptation, and movement. Okay, those are huge. Nutrition, adaptation, and movement. What do I mean by adaptation? I talked about that. Your nerve system, your body's ability to handle and adapt to those various types of stressors. Okay, the way that it can do that, make sure your nerve system's balanced out, make sure that it's got the nutrients that it needs in order to begin to heal. Okay, so what if we need energy production? What do those cells need? What gives us energy? The food. So what types of food? Like what's in a food? Can somebody break down what a macronutrient is? Anybody know what that is? Heard that term before, macronutrients? So in the basics, we're looking at fat, protein, and carbohydrates. Okay, so we've got fat, protein, and carbohydrates. Okay, we need all of them. We need enzymes. We need electrolytes. And we need minerals. Okay, so we need these nutrients, right? So we have something called macronutrients, which are the fats, proteins, and carbs. And then we have micronutrients, which are those things, the minerals, your vitamins, your electrolytes. Okay. And so a lot of people get stuck right there. Okay, they get stuck in the macronutrients, fat, protein, carbs, right? Because who's confused about whether you should eat carbs or not? All right. Yeah, for sure. Who's confused about whether you should eat fat or not? Right? So we were told one thing, we do one thing, and then all of a sudden we're told a different story. And so in any given room, I've got 1/3 of the people that are on a low carb diet. I've got 1/3 of people that are on a high carb diet. I got 1/3 of people that are completely confused. And I got well, that'd be a fourth, I guess, is like they just gave up. So, or they've tried them all, right? So we probably all tried at some point. So those things are important, and they are important if you are trying to find metabolic flexibility, meaning that right now 14 out of 15 people are metabolically inflexible, meaning there's some type of I don't want to say pathogenesis, but your metabolism is not working right. So your energy production is not where it should be. Okay. It used to be like, 1 out of 10 or whatever, but now it's like almost everybody. The exception is the person that's metabolically sound. Okay. So, if we're coming from a metabolic inflexible position, then there are times that we need to pull away some of those macronutrients to ease the burden off of your system. Okay. Some of you had a lot of food intolerances, or you have, IBS or constipation, whatever, lots of digestive issues. And so to ease the burden off of our digestive system and let it heal, then we will pull out a lot of things. Okay. And that's why some people really do well, like on a carnivore diet or a low fat keto diet, because the reason it's helping is, number one, you are just by default reducing calories. Okay. But number two, you're reducing the burden off of the digestive system. Okay. That's why they work. They work short term. I never recommend them long term. Here's why. Because it is not your primary source of energy production. Okay, your body, if it was designed to only eat meat for a long period of time, that would be your primary pathway in how it breaks down, but it's not. It's secondary, meaning that it's designed, that it is there for survival mechanisms. Okay, so like back in the day when we had to go out and actually harvest and gather and kill our food sources, especially in the winter, were very, very sparse, right? So the body would then kick over to its, like, its backup system. Okay. And so that backup system can work really well. God's pretty smart, knows what he's doing, but it's a secondary system. It's not designed to be that way long term. And so women, especially, if we're on, this is what I found, if you're on like the low fat or the keto, again, good short term, but long term, it increases your cortisol, increases the stress. So if we're increasing stress, how are we helping our body? We're not. And so they'll get, to a certain point, and then just everything just stops, falls apart. Somebody can be like looking really good, really, really thin, and like they've got poor teeth. Like their teeth are like really soft. I'm thinking, if your teeth are soft, that's telling you that you're not getting the minerals and the nutrients that you need. Okay. So anyways, I'm not going to go down that road, but those things can be good for a short period of time until we ease the burden off the digestive system, and then we can start adding back in the more nutrient dense foods that your body can handle. Okay. If I were to say, hey, let's do this, and this on a metabolically inflexible person, what would happen to that person? It would overwhelm them, right? So what you have to understand, okay, is that results are not going to happen overnight, okay? But every step is a step in the right direction that over a period of time really, really adds up. If you have to think about, going back to the Pop-Tarts and Count Chocula or whatever, how long did it take you to get to this metabolically inflexible point, right? So over a period of a decade or plus. So for things to turn around, it's not going to be an overnight process. And that's where I think women especially, we get really frustrated because we want to be thin, we want to look good, we want to have that energy, and we want it now. And that's why the weight loss industry is so huge. Thousands and thousands of dollars are spent, give me the pill, give me the band, give me the surgery, whatever, but longevity wise, we've got to look at this from an energy production standpoint and a longevity standpoint, saying, hey, I might look good now, but how am I metabolically, and how is that going to fuel me into my 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s? Okay. So, the macronutrients. What's missing for everybody is those micronutrients. Okay. We know a little. Everybody knows a little to dabble to just get dangerous, right? We know, like, especially in the last 2 years, they told us to take what? Yeah, vitamin D, zinc, vitamin C, those types of things, which, don't get me wrong, I mean, these things are really, really good in comparison to a medication, right? We know medication has its time and a place, but it's not for health, right? It's for emergencies only. But we can have problems in just even in the supplementation if we don't understand those mechanisms and what it's actually doing inside of our body. Okay, so the production center, the mitochondria, It's trying to make that cake. What ingredients does it need? We need the fats, we need the carbs, we need the proteins, right? We need the enzymes, we need the catalysts to be able to take a process to completion. Okay? And so the catalysts for most of these processes are minerals. And kind of some of them the same thing, are electrolytes. Okay? I'm not even talking about vitamins, although vitamins are very, very important. Okay? A lot of the vitamins we can get from our food sources, but many, many of us, has your doctor ever talked to you about minerals? No, it's almost non-existent in healthcare today, right? We have things like copper, selenium, iron, which is not a good thing. We'll get into that. It is a good thing. Too much of it is not a good thing. We've got our potassium, sodium, all these things that are available to us, and then we are completely ignoring. And so a lot of the, if you want to, not just follow me, but there's a lot of good researchers out there. There's a lot of books that are extremely boring but very, very fascinating. But if you're like a seeker like me, and you like the biology and you like the that kind of thing, I really respect the work of Morley Robbins. He had an interview. He's had actually a couple of interviews with Dr. McCullough. Do you know who Dr. McCullough is? He has the largest natural health website in the world. He has been very outspoken, very truthful in his what I'm going to say. He's very dedicated towards getting the truth out during the whole last 2-3 years, and I very, very much respect him for that. He's had everything. He's had everything threatened, and he still continues to just speak truth out there and what he has learned. And I love the fact that he's able to continue to say, hey, you know what, I'm learning. He would tell you that what he's doing now is different than what he was doing 10 years ago. And he's not ashamed to admit that, So Ray Peat is another, he's a very avid researcher. There's a lot of, if you want to talk to me about it later, we can. But anyways, lots of people that I really respect and have really gained a lot of knowledge from them as well. But one of the biggest things that we have to understand is that in that energy production, okay, we've got our car, but the car doesn't go without fuel, and it doesn't go without the battery. Okay, so in our car, that battery, in our cell, that battery is copper. That's what Morley describes. The energy comes from is copper. Okay, copper is the catalyst of converting your oxygen and your iron through that process to get to the ATP, the energy. Okay? What happens when you put oxygen and iron together? Do you know what happens? Oxidizes. It rusts. Yes. So what happens in our bodies when we do not have copper, the oxygen and the iron do not get converted properly, and we have oxidation. Does that make sense? Okay. So we have these terms, these oxidation, and you have these free radicals that occur inside of your body because we're missing those catalysts to be able to convert these things properly. And so iron is a very important element inside of us, but if we have too much of it, it becomes very, very toxic inside of our systems. The crazy thing is that we are the majority of us are extremely copper deficient, and we're overloaded with iron. Our cereals are fortified with iron fillings. Everything is fortified with iron. It's pretty crazy to think about. And so we can have all kinds of issues because of this iron toxicity, if you will, that, we can diagnose it and call it this and this and this and this. But really, what it really boils down to is we don't have those catalysts. Most of us are copper deficient. Why don't we know about this? I don't know. There was a couple of studies, and I think in the medical world, if a study comes out, even if it was proven false, it takes like 10 years for it to be, adopted. It's really crazy, really, really crazy. So there was like these people that said copper is toxic. You don't want to have copper ever. And so, they took that and they flew with it, and they're still, I'm telling you, probably less than 1% to 2% of practitioners really have a full understanding of what copper can do in the body and what it's supposed to do in the body. So we need things like copper. Part of that production from ADP to ATP is also you must have magnesium. Okay. How many of you were told that magnesium is important? A handful? Yeah. Did your doctor ever talk to you about magnesium? Only for stool softening, right? That's about it. Okay. Magnesium is a critical element inside every single cell. To take that copper and convert it over to do its processes, it has to have retinol. Retinol is something that we are critically deficient in. Why? Does anybody know what retinol is? Vitamin A. Very good. So retinol is vitamin A. What retinol is not is beta carotene. But when you get most forms of vitamin A, it is in the form of beta carotene. It is a huge and tragic mistake. Retinol cannot come from a plant source. Retinol comes from an animal source. So these minerals, and who said eggs? Yeah, eggs. Eggs are a wonderful, wonderful source of retinol. Also, and I should say pasture-raised eggs. Do you know what color your egg yolk should be? Orange. They should be orange, not yellow. Most of the ones that you get from the grocery store, unfortunately, are yellow. So raise your own chickens. or from your neighbor. Yeah. They shouldn't be eating organic feed. That feed is usually some type of, it's organic. It's better than I guess not, but it's from a plant source or grain. Okay. They should be out in the pasture eating bugs, eating, the things that they're designed to do. Chickens are carnivores. Most people don't know that. They eat. You let them, they'll eat themselves. It's crazy. But they are. It's really disgusting. But your egg yolks should be orange. So they should be on the pasture as much as possible, eating the things that nature intended. So really great source of retinol. Also, things like ghee and grass-fed butter. Really great source of retinol. You also need vitamin D in this process. Vitamin D is actually a hormone, and vitamin D comes from the sun. It comes from the sun. Okay? It should not come from a pill. And so we need to have at least 15 minutes of sun exposure not sun slathered in toxic, carcinogenic sunscreen. Okay, but 15 minutes of exposure on a daily basis. That helps convert it into the active form to be able to go through this process that I was telling you about, where you take the ADP and go to ATP. Okay? Is this really boring? Are you learning things? I feel like it's really boring, but I think it's important things to know. Yeah, question. I'm going to repeat it, Kyle, so that people listening can hear.
You said not in pill form.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Not in pill form.
Okay, well, what about the winter?
Then you still need to be out. Bundle up. Expose your face as much as possible, or some part of your skin, for 15 minutes.
I was just thinking that it's not real sunny here in Ohio
It's not.
in the winter.
It's not. Mm-hmm. But what's happened, and forgive me because I didn't remember the mechanism, but ultimately, if you are taking it in the pill form, again, vitamin D is a hormone. It's different from the pill that you're getting. Ultimately, if you're taking too much of it, it will decrease the bioavailability of copper. So you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot there. So I think short term maybe could have some benefit, but we shouldn't be taking it on an everyday basis.
Really?
Yeah. And I know it's very controversial because, like you said, the last 2 years we're told to take zinc, all good things. They're all good things. Zinc, very, very good thing, but it actually, it's kind of like a yin and yang. You have to have both. You have to have zinc and you have to have copper. A patient told me that they use zinc and they use copper. I think it was on like the hulls of ships to keep the bacteria, the slime or whatever from growing on them. So they would put one on one side and one on the other. I'd love to have him here. I wish he could explain it to me, but yes.
So what about vitamin D and calcium? Because when you take calcium, they always put vitamin D with it.
Yeah, that's really the whole calcium thing is a big also misnomer. It really is. It really is. You know, do we need calcium? Yes. Is it one of those things that's one of those micronutrients? Yes, it is. But the biggest thing is that if you're in this mineral deficiency, you're supplementing with these things, the body cannot absorb it properly. And what it does is it ends up depositing it. So it deposits it in your arteries. Pretty crazy. So yeah, we need it. It is important, but we need it in the right forms, right quantities, and really what will happen. So like when people say, oh, you're osteoporotic, right? Okay. So what happens is that if your body is in an inflammatory state, meaning that basically if you're metabolically inflexible, you've got some kind of inflammation happening. And so in order to buffer that inflammation, the body will pull calcium from the bones and magnesium from the cells. Okay, so we have these circulating amounts in the blood system where it's not necessarily like, you get your blood work and they're like, oh, that's bad, you're high or whatever. Well, what's the body trying to do? Again, going back to that perspective of innate intelligence, what's it trying to do? Well, it's not a bad thing. It's actually trying to buffer your inflammation. Okay. So it's doing the best thing it can, which is pulling that calcium from where it knows to pull from. Okay. So there are instances where, calcium, like if a woman is pregnant, I'm going to say, yeah, have some calcium lactate. That's probably good for you, but it's not necessarily what's missing from a person if they are osteoporotic. There's some other things that we need to address, which would be the inflammatory process, the acidity, and often it is those, lack of minerals. I tell you what's fascinating, guys, is that even like your farmers, they all know that with the animals and the crops and everything, that copper is huge. We have such a copper deficiency. I'm assuming it's the world over. I know it's in America just because of our farming processes. Do you know how glyphosate works? Roundup. Do you know how that works? You know how it kills weeds? It destroys their mineral content. Interesting. So then what happens is that goes into the soil, and what happens to the soil? It depletes the soil of the minerals. So now we grow these crops, and what are our crops missing? Minerals. So we're eating these foods that are devoid of minerals, and what's happening to us? It's the same thing, right? So that's why it's so detrimental. But I don't know where I was going with that. Oh yeah. So even the farmers and things, they know like this is a big issue because they have to got to feed the cattle, copper, got to put copper on the crops, those types of things. It's really, really important. Okay, this is gonna blow your mind because this is a woman thing, and this happened to me. I was going back. I'm like all these tangents. Going back to zinc and copper, okay? They're like yin and yang. Zinc is really, really good for the immune. I just hit the microphone. Really, really good for your immune system. We all know that, right? Very, very good. But if you have overabundance of zinc and not enough copper, you know what it's going to do to your hair? It actually grays it. Turns it gray, yeah. So when I learned about copper and I started supplementing, you know what happened to my hair? It started turning brown again. I was getting a lot of grays. I don't color my hair. I don't plan on ever doing it. I might change my mind, who knows, but it started growing back, and my family noticed it. My family noticed it because I have my family still down in Texas, and I see them, every so often or whatnot, and like I got multiple comments. It was pretty crazy. But this is what else is crazy is that I love horses. I have horses. I train horses. In the horse world, you will supplement your horse with copper if you notice that its coat fades in the summer. Isn't that crazy? How do we know these things in the farming world, in the animal world, and we can't apply a simple thing to our own health?
So you said you supplemented it.
Yeah.
With food?
Beef liver. Beef liver is one of the best ways to get copper. Beef liver is disgusting, by the way. So thankfully, there are beef liver capsules that you can take. Okay. Like 1 in 10 people are really weird and they actually like liver. So I'll tell people, yeah, eat it once a week. That's fine. That's all you need, once a week. Okay. But the capsules, and I have a protocol. So if you want to know, I have that. Most of you should have it. But if you don't have it, that's fine. Just let me know after we're done and I'll make sure you get it. Yeah, so thought that was pretty crazy.
How do you get calcium if you don't take a pill? Milk or cheese or?
That's a really good way. Milk really got villainized as well. And I will say that traditional milk, I wouldn't drink at all. Can you find a really great source of milk? Can your body tolerate it? There's so many things that go into that. Like we were talking about the metabolic inflexibility. When I start with someone, they may not be able to handle milk right away until we get the burden off and allow their system to rebuild, Then at that point, then we can experiment with milks. Usually the European hard cheeses have a what's called a rennet that helps to break down those types of things that you may not be able to digest. And they're actually pretty good digestibly. I say European hard cheese. The aging process is really good, and the rennet that they use. Most Americans use a vegetable rennet, and that's not good for you. So you got to start reading some labels, things that you didn't know before. Milk from A2 cows is actually, and cheese. I learned that one of our cheesemakers in Amish country, all their cattle are A2, which is pretty cool. But it doesn't have like lactose. So a lot of people can handle that a lot better too from an A2 cow. Some people can handle goat if it's kind of preference that way. But yeah, really great way. The problem is the pasteurization, honestly. The pasteurization process, we were talking about enzymes. It burns out and takes away all the enzymes that help you to break down that milk. And that's why so many people have issues with it. Okay. And because of the laws, you're not allowed to buy raw milk, but you can do a co-op, or a herd share, so that you can buy into that herd and then you can get your raw milk. That's really the best way. Know your source.
So like your 2% and all that's just worthless. I mean, or skim milk, or is there anything in it? All fat. It's just amount of fat. Does that mean?
Yeah, and here's the other thing. I went to Kroger the other day, and all but one milk, which was it was a whole milk. All of them were A and D fortified with the wrong kind of A, and then the D that we just said we don't really need to do. Yeah, so I found one brand that was pasture raised, and it was the whole milk that didn't have, the A wasn't A and D fortified. My family does pretty well with it. But that is the blessing that we have here in Ohio, is there are a lot of really great farms out here that don't put the antibiotics in their cattle, and they're sustainably raised, pasture raised. And that's the other thing with a lot of the conventionally raised milks, is you've got the hormones and the antibiotics and everything that they're putting into those cattle that you're still
What about the
getting.
almond milk or the oat milk?
So, I'm so glad that you asked that question, because I want to get back to energy. Okay. So because cow's milk was so villainized, we had this huge explosion of your almond milk, your nut milks, your, whatever kind of milk they have out here these days. Well, nuts and seeds should be in moderation. Those are polyunsaturated fatty acids, which are not ideal in your body. Okay. The best sources of fat are actually your saturated acids. Fatty acids. Sorry. Saturated fatty acids. Your saturated fats. So, polyunsaturated fatty acids. Here's the thing. When I talked about, 10, 20 years ago, people not having as much metabolic issues. Why do you think that is? Do you think our genetics just got worse? Our diet. Okay. And so what changed is we were told to avoid eggs. We were told to, get off the milk, get off the fat. We were told to eat low fat, these high sugar, high processed foods. They're very easy to make. They're very convenient, but they are devoid in nutrition. They're devoid in energy. They're high in process. They're in these linoleic acids that create in the inflammatory process in our body. These polyunsaturated fatty acids, or what are called PUFAs, contribute to that process. So your best source is really going to be the cow's milk or even coconut milk. Okay, because that is a saturated form. Again, I think there's some benefit to nuts and seeds in small amounts, but it's not something that we should be doing in these mass quantities. So going back, I don't want to forget this. This is super important because women, especially when I'm doing all this coaching, we think less is better. So when I'm looking at these food journals, I'm seeing, we all do the shake in the morning because our shakes have, all these things that we're trying to ease the burden and give you your nutrients. Okay. But then for lunch, there's a fruit. And then for snack, there's a fruit. Then for lunch, there's a salad. And then there's some carrots. And then there's another salad with some meat. And that's about it. And so we've all been brainwashed into thinking that this is how you eat clean. This is what you need to do to lose weight and look trim and be healthy. Okay. There is merit to vegetables. Vegetables have those, they do have those minerals. They have those nutrients. They have those colors, that give us those vitamins, but your body needs energy. And where do we get energy from? Carbs. Yes, we need energy from carb sources. Those carb sources, fruit is one of the best ways that you can get energy. Okay. We need to have that, those, nutrient dense foods. Okay. Vegetables are very, very good. They are calorically, energy wise, they're very, very poor. Okay, so you can eat a ton of vegetables and a ton of salads and feel like crap. I'm being nice. I'm on a show. Okay. So salad has its place, but it shouldn't be in the place of your lunch and your supper. Okay. And this is something that is really hard for us to understand because, again, low fat, go on a diet, eat the salad. But we have to look at it from a metabolic standpoint. What's going to give me the most bang for my buck? The very first thing, the simplest thing that you can do to help your metabolism is start exercising. Okay? There is no magic bullet for that. You have to start moving. That is the fastest way to get your insulin levels down, to get you more metabolically flexible. Okay. The second thing that we can do is, okay, what's going to give me the best source of energy to make that fuel, to make that cake for every single cell in my body? So again, in respect to minerals and in respect to those micronutrients, what did your grandparents eat? Your older ladies. What did your grandparents eat? What did they cook with? Lard, butter.
Oh, yeah, they did.
Didn't they? Yeah. Did they eat eggs? You bet you did. They did. Okay. They ate those nutrient dense foods. They got the retinol. They got the copper because copper wasn't depleted back then. Okay. So I'm not saying go out and eat a whole bunch of lard and a whole bunch of fat and, but what I'm saying is that in respect, calories in, calories out, you can't overeat. Yeah, you're still going to be fat, right? But in respect to what's going to give me the most bang for my buck and be nutrient dense, then we want to find these sources: saturated fats, your organ meats. We talked about liver, the eggs, milk, grass-fed if you can, fruits. Okay, vegetables, they're important, but they shouldn't be, if we want to be calorically deficient to lose the weight, then we want to do so in a way that we're going to be as highly nutrient dense as we can. Does that make sense? Okay. And really, 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 you need to be moving. 100%. There's no way to get around that. You're designed to move. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
What about Greek yogurt and that kind of stuff for calcium?
Greek yogurt.
How do you feel about yogurt?
I don't have a big problem with yogurt. I have a problem with all the stuff that they put inside of yogurt.
Okay. So if you can find a very, very few ingredient yogurt, Siggy's is probably a pretty good one. I'd be okay with Siggy's, Siggi. That's a pretty good one. I don't get paid by Siggy's. Siggy's, if you want to pay me, let me know. There's probably a couple out there, but usually a lot of them will add like some kind of guar gum or sucralose or something that's just that your body doesn't need. Okay. Where were we? What was I talking about? Energy. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Energy. I need some, apparently. Where are we at? Okay. Nutrient dense foods. Okay. So going back to, okay, why are we having, things like hair loss and whatnot? Okay. So we're overfed and undernourished. Okay. We are not making the energy production that we need. Your thyroid is very, very heavily involved in your metabolic process and in this ATP production. Okay. It needs iodine, something most of us are also deficient in. You're going to ask me, so I'm going to tell you a good source of iodine is cranberry juice, 100%. Okay. But when we were talking about the oxidation and the rusting process, okay, when we don't have that conversion that occurs in the thyroid, when we cannot convert, we need to have iodine, and we can't convert T3, T4, etc. What happens is we get too much hydrogen peroxide. Okay, we have hydrogen peroxide buildup, and that's where the TPO antibodies come from. So you get that diagnosis of Hashimoto's or whatnot, the autoimmune type thing. Okay. So the thyroid is heavily involved in our metabolic process. It needs that energy. It needs the iodine. It needs the copper. And long story short, it was the work of David Brownstein, who's an MD, who really, really dove into the thyroid. He had a clinic, and he just did extraordinarily well helping these women, understanding that a lot of them were iodine deficient. But there was an outlier of these women that just seemed to do, and men too, that just seemed to do better with a small amount of what do they call it? Armoroid. It's like some version of the thyroid medication, whatever. And he was like, I'm like, okay, we're on the right track here, but what else is missing? Because I don't think that was God's design. Hey, you're doing great. I'm glad your energy level is great. Still take your thyroid medication, right? So I knew something was missing. So again, seeking, I'm like, what else is out there? What else is out there? And that's where I found Ray Pete, who went to bioenergetics, which was looking at the energy production of a cell and what happens from birth to death. He was actually what was he? He was some kind of researcher, and he found through his research is where he really, really discovered, like, wow, what takes a cell from being a great cell all the way through its, end of life to a poor cell. And he was seeing these patterns and whatnot. It's amazing, his work. But anyways, and then that got me to Morley Robbins, who helped me to discover the missing, the copper element and having bioavailable copper. And so when we combine the copper, we do the retinol, we have those good sources of iodine, and we have those nutrient-dense foods, which you can learn from Weston A. Price. If you look at the Weston A. Price Foundation, there are a lot of good foundational elements there. His story, if you don't know, he was a dentist. I think his son was 10 years old. His son had to have a root canal, and his son ended up dying. So he dedicated his whole life to, he searched the country looking at these
groups of people that had like these amazing teeth. You know, we had these poor countries, not well off, but they had the widest and the strongest teeth. And then he was like, how in the world are they doing this? And so he went and he was like, wow, look at their diet. And he started emulating what they were doing. And it's a really fascinating story, but he's since passed. There are some things that are maybe that we don't follow. I think just because he did pass away, I just don't think he had been able to discover it yet. You know what I mean? Like, again, it's all a journey. We're all learning, and God in his infinite wisdom, you know, knows more in his little pinky than we do our whole lifetimes. So, anyways, that's a really great source to follow as well. We talked about retinol coming from eggs. Retinol, a good source is also your cod liver oil. That's also on protocol. Don't worry. Cod liver oil. Again, something that was a remedy long time ago. Did your grandparents do cod liver oil? Yes, they did. Right? I find it so fascinating. There were so many wonderful things that happened back in the day, and we don't have time to go into why that went by the wayside, but it has a lot to do with the pharmaceutical industry. Yeah, she said it. I'm not going to say it. We'll use that for another talk. But I'm going to wrap up here. Any other questions before we? Okay. Hang tight, if you will, and I'll make sure we get that protocol for you. I'm so glad that y'all joined me. Love you here. I'm not even looking at the camera. People are like, where is she looking at? But I thought this was really important that we get this message out in every avenue, in every way that we can. Okay? See you guys next time.
Fuel, work, grow. That's your call to action. You can follow me on Instagram at Dr. Fitjen. That's dr.fitjen, all lowercase, as well as ruggedathlete.us.